Well, hello, educator friends, and welcome to the School Life series. I'm your host, Ross Braun, and I am so glad you're here today. This podcast is created for educators across the country. The people doing the real work in schools every single day. Each episode features real educators, real stories, and real strategies to help you not only survive the work, but stay connected and remind you why you became an educator in the first place. On every episode, we will bring you fresh ideas, strategies, and perspectives, allowing you to grow in your profession, learning from the best educators all over the country. Season 4 is all about sustaining educators, strengthening schools, and staying human in this profession. I'm so excited to kick off today's episode. Let's do it. Well, today we have another awesome episode ahead with just another very special guest that I cannot wait for you to learn from. Justin is another phenomenal educator who I've been able to connect with via social media. He's going to share his unique education story with you shortly. But I have to say, this is a guy that is like me, is a true positivity promoter. He's a family guy, a passionate educator, and an underdog, self proclaimed underdog who believes in education, all it stands for, and truly believes in every person who is pouring their heart into this work. So I'm very grateful for this sit down with Justin Pickens. Justin, thank you for joining us here and welcome to the School Life series.
Ross, I am so appreciative to be here. You've had amazing guests even to be considered on this podcast. You say I'm a phenomenal educator, but it truly means a lot to be on this because what you do for teachers matters. And if you're a teacher right now that's on your drive to school, I just want to say have a great day. Those kids need you.
Eh, That's it. That's the message. That's why Justin is here, right in here. So before we get into your work and your educational journey, talk a little bit just about you, who you are, where you're from, for those listening that may not know who you are.
Born in the great state of Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, lived there till I was 5. Grew up for the most part in southern Missouri, spent a little time in the desert of California when I was in middle school,
Okay.
went to college in Kansas City, the big city. We're talking like I saw a couple stoplights and like both hands on the steering wheel, armpit sweat just pouring down. And then I went to college and it's the same story. Met a girl, her family lived there, and then I have never left the city since. Kansas City's been home, the Kansas side, for about 20 years. I have a 5-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. So we are in the messy middle. So if there's anybody out there that's in the messy middle, budget's tight, sleep's margin is not where it should be, and you're just keeping your head above water,
Oh, man.
let's do this together. Stick with it.
Yes, seriously. And I think that's so good that you shared that because so many people see, you and I and people that are on this show like superheroes and they must have it all together. And that is not the case whatsoever. We are right there in the thick of it with you. So thanks for sharing a little bit about your personal life, Justin. He is a Chiefs fan. We did connect with that before we started recording. He didn't have a choice. All right. He married into the Chiefs kingdom.
Yes, I did.
So now, I told all of our listeners before we kind of got started that you have a unique educational story. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about your journey in education. What led you to become an educator? Where'd you start? And where are you now?
So I'll give you a brief synopsis. So I'm kind of the underdog story, although when I speak to educators, I actually say that I never felt like an underdog growing up, even though statistically I should be. Actually was an overcomer. An underdog by definition is somebody who is a victim or a predicted loser. And I'm not one of those, neither are the kids that you teach. What we are overcomers because it's not if hard times come, but when they come, that you're going to have the ability, the skills and the hope to persevere in those circumstances. I grew up in some tough situations as a child, uh, abject poverty. Both parents have been to prison. My dad went to the Missouri State Penitentiary for methamphetamines twice. Uh, Dysfunction in the home. I've been to foster care. Like if you name it, these are the words of, Justin Pickens has had the deck stacked up against him. And when you look at it, all the negative things that have happened in my life, you would agree with that statement. But that's not the case because there's also a lot of positive things that have surrounded me. So, for example, I look back on all the things my parents used to say. They used to say, listen to your teachers and coaches when you go to college. They planted that seed in my head. They always would say, do as I say, not as I do. And you don't have to stop what you don't start. But also, my teachers made me a believer in myself. They always say, if you don't believe in yourself, find somebody who does.
Hmm.
They gave me this hope that led to me having purpose, and then purpose led to resilience that I never let any type of standard slow me down that would have set me up for failure. So, got into teaching because I wanted to be that teacher, just like that was for me, that listened, cared, made you feel like a somebody. My favorite saying is, be a somebody who makes everybody feel like a
Yeah.
somebody.
Yep.
And that's why I got into education. Now, I told you before we started, I wanted to be a PE teacher when I first started, but my college guidance counselor said, you'll never get a job. This is
Yep.
in about 2008. This is where they were not just hiring heartbeats. It was hard to get a job. So I was like, all right, well, I love social studies. I love learning and getting different perspective on things. So became a high school social studies teacher. Went in with my nose up, being like, I'm a 12th grade government teacher. I've got it all figured out. I would see elementary teachers at our back to school convocations wearing matching t-shirts that would say like, I teach, what's your superpower? And I'd kind of roll my eyes.
Yeah.
And now I teach elementary, and I'm like, they deserve to wear those shirts. They're the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life. But I started in social studies, did the classroom for 5 years, middle school for 8, but then I switched to PE after my 5th year. And that's where I did middle school PE for 8 years, found that that was my sweet spot for a
Yeah.
long time. I mean, middle school is just amazing. They're smart enough to have conversations with, but silly and goofy. And then the things happened, and I will always tell people, like, after COVID, I was still on fire for teaching, loved it, but the perfect storm was brewing. Just had our first kid. My wife wanted me to stop coaching. I've been a 3 sport coach all my career up until that
Hmm.
point. The garage door was already going up as I was getting home, as she was getting ready to hand off the kid. And so money was tight, frustration was tight, margins on time was tight. And then my best friend from high school became wildly successful in the business world.
Okay.
He just sold his business. He doesn't ever have to work a day in his life if he doesn't want to.
You talk about
But I saw all
wildly
this.
successful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw all this happening, and a part of me was like, did I choose the right profession? Am I living up to my potential? All those questions that everyone has. And at the right time, pride was setting in. And that was the same time I was recruited to another field where people told me what I wanted to hear. You're smart, you're funny, you're charismatic, and you can make a lot of money doing this. Being the last teacher you ever thought would leave education, I left in 2023, and they traded my whistle and my shorts in for a suit and tie and a elevator and a skyscraper, and became a financial advisor. And that road kind of led me back to what I didn't want to do in life. And it ultimately led me back to the classroom and led me back to elementary PE teaching. So that's just kind of a quick gist.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to go with that.
No, it's good. And we're going to hit on that, that you left the profession for something shiny and gold that you thought that was where your life's going to take you. And you're right back into, where your heart was. And so we're going to talk more about that here in a minute. But a couple more questions for you as we get to know you more, Justin. Who do you say has been your biggest influence in your life?
That's a really, tough question. As an educator, I always say a few people. Jeff Wilkie, he's my high school head football coach, now the principal at Webb City High School. And then next year, he'll be the principal in Girard, Kansas. That guy was just the epitome of do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. But Ross, I will tell you, I'd be doing a disservice to all of my teachers. I feel like I'm on an Academy Award list, when you're up there getting an award, and it's like, why are they listing 17,000 people? But it's like, I've got to mention, Darby Stansel, and just, down the line, my high school basketball coach, my elementary speech teacher. I took speech lessons growing up, my high
Yep.
school English
Right
teacher,
here
Miss
too.
Scoville. But I would say Darby Stansel, Jeff Wilkie were the epitome of do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. And they put a little extra intention in their time with me.
I love that. And I get that answer a lot on the show. And when I'm out, meet working with schools and educators, we ask about like, your why and all that. And so many times It goes back to coaches and teachers that we've had in our lives, so we can say, they stamped my life. They put me on this path to success that I didn't know even existed. And that's the reminder of the work that we do. Sometime 20 years down the road, someone's going to say, my life is the way it is because of Justin Pickens. Oh, and that's our harvest as educators that we get to have. And it's so special, something that we just can't take for granted and can't take lightly. I like to add a little humor now into School Life series. This is a question. I've gotten some great stories, and you've been everywhere, the high school, middle school, and out the elementary. So I'm sure you have a whole book that you could share with us. But what's one story or one moment that you could share with the audience and say, you won't believe this happened to me?
So first year teaching at Bonner Springs High School, and I'm teaching, seniors, but I'm also teaching freshmen. And this freshman class was like the freshman class that had
Oh,
been
yeah.
talked about. The elementary teachers had a special meeting with middle school teachers. Middle school teachers had a special meeting with high school when this class got up there. When I got to school, they were like, don't give these kids homework. They will fail. And I was
Yeah.
like, young, out of school. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to make it meaningful, relevant. I quickly found out if I graded homework for points, I was going to fail most of my
Oh,
class. So we're in class and it's freshman world history. And I'm doing everything I can to get these kids energized. I'm dancing around, standing on tables, yelling, screaming. And one day I come across this obscure article online that was basically where the middle finger came from. And it was history related. This obscure article that's not factorial correct, at least now I know that, basically was talking about how English bowmen, when they would get captured from war, they'd cut their middle finger off, or they'd cut this finger, their pointer finger off, you know, and then they couldn't pluck the string anymore. And then naturally the middle finger came out of this. So I'm in like my second lesson of the day, just finally, kids are just locked in. Where does the middle finger come from? This is awesome. And they're eating out of the palm of my hand. And you know who walks in unexpectedly? Joe Hornback, my principal. And this is for all you first year teachers out that, every evaluation is the biggest deal in your life. You're like,
for
am I going to
sure.
have a job tomorrow? He comes in and he watches me. The show must go on. He's sitting back there. I wrap up the lesson in about 10 minutes. And then about 30 minutes later, I get an email across the screen that's just like, hey, love the lesson. Can we sit down tomorrow and can you share your sources with me?
There we go.
And I'm just going in like, I'm fired. This is it. So I go back and try to find that obscure article. Cannot find it anywhere. No chat GTP, no AI. I mean, I probably did 4 hours of research trying to find anything that would say this was
Well,
true.
you weren't going to sleep that whole night before, so yeah, there you had something to do.
So couldn't find the article. I go in the next day with my tail between my legs, just already packing up my boxes, expecting to be fired. And Joe just says, hey, that was an amazing lesson as far as energy, enthusiasm. You're really trying to connect with these kids. Just double check your sources next time. And I was like, that's it. And he was like, that's it, buddy. Have a great day. And then I actually ended up winning teacher of the quarter at that school, voted on by the
That's cool.
students later in that
Yeah,
quarter. So
all
yeah,
thanks to the
check
middle
your
finger.
sources. Check them twice
Check
too.
your sources. No kidding. That's cool that your principal, gave you the grace, didn't expect you to be perfect, and knew where you were at in your educational journey, and that, you know what, we all make mistakes. On a more serious note, final question as we wrap up our intro. And this is a new question in season 4 that I really love some of the answers I've gotten. But what is something about education that you wish more people outside of education understood?
Every day is an opportunity that you are going to leave a core memory for one of the kids in your class. And you don't know when that core memory is going to show up or come. It could be something big you do and grandiose, or it could be just a little thing that you say to a kid. But your opportunities to make core memories at this early age, no matter where you're at, it's the most powerful profession that somebody could ever get into from the inside out.
Yeah. So good. So good and so true. I'm sure you've had it. Those kids that come up to you years later and like, remember that one activity or that one lesson or even the one conversation and the memories that they'll take with them for the lifetime. And you're just doing your job. That's all you
Mhm.
think. I mean, you're providing those core memories. That's such a good answer. So thank you. Let's get into today's topic. So today's focus is what I'm titling For the Love of Education. So if you haven't already picked up on this, Justin loves education and all it stands for. He's shared his unique story and what brought him back to the profession. It's very obvious when he speaks. And I'm hopefully you've picked up on that. I've picked up on that for a long time now, just following him on social media. So Justin, when I say for the love of education, what immediately comes to your mind?
That if somebody asks me how was my day, it's a cycle. I love education, but every single day it's can't believe I get paid for this. Can't believe I got paid for this. I deserve to get paid. Oh, I don't get paid enough. And for me, the love of education is that cycle and trying to stay steady through the good and the
Right.
bad times because no job is perfect, but and no person is perfect, but there is no reason to ever not thrive where you're at. And my favorite saying is if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And that's
Right.
with any profession. Like if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And if you can just keep that in mind of like, well, how can I have a better time at my job? You'll continue to love it and then you'll be better for everyone around you.
No, that's a great answer. And I think, when you think about this, I say this a lot of times when I speak to schools too. Like there are 96,000 elementary schools across the United States. If you're not happy, if you are struggling in your particular school, maybe it's time to find somewhere else that where you can thrive, you can feel supported wherever it may be. That's the love of education. And just like you went through those cycles throughout the day of joking about pay, the school year is a long year. I think we all go through that too in the different seasons of the school year. All of us were fired up. We could run through a brick wall. It's February right now and our tanks are empty. And what does that look like? But the love of education is still there. And so sometimes in those trying seasons, tough seasons, we just got to reach down and find it a little bit more. And I think you said earlier the easiest way is to, engage kids, get kids excited about their learning. And all of a sudden, you're excited about what you're teaching. You mentioned Jonathan Alzheimer. That if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. He's all about engaging students, simple ways that we can get kids fired up. And so, why do you think, Justin? My next question for you: why do you think that this type of mindset of loving the work that we're doing is crucial for the job?
Because mindset is everything with any job, especially teaching, because it will beat you down. And here's the crazy thing, Ross. You said there's 96 thousand elementaries. There's 96,000 elementary PE teachers, and half of them might not like their job right now. And a lot of it is just the mindset that they're bringing. And I have a special saying of you've got to be intentional with every single thing that you do, intentional with your relationships, intentional with your lesson planning, intentional with your anticipatory hook. If you just drive home intentionality, you will reap a harvest at the end of the day with better lessons, more engagement, more connection. But you've got to own it that you need to be intentional with everything that you do because as an early teacher, principals would always ask me like, why are you so good at what you do in the
Yeah,
classroom? And I couldn't name it. I could not name. Just I just was like, I show up. I just teach. It's fun for
yeah,
me.
yes,
And then it's only been now after 15 years, the separator is solely one word, intentionality. Pedagogy strategies, they all serve their time and their place, but intentionality has been my biggest separator for what has taken me to be uh, a normal teacher to a high achieving teacher that is going to leave a memory, a rememberable experience for these kids.
man, it's good. We had already connected, but I'm connecting with you even more because that is my word I use way too much in my home, in my work, when I'm working with schools. It's like intentional. My kids get tired of hearing me tell them to be intentional in whatever you're doing in your life. And so, I like that as educators. If someone's listening and they're like, "Where do I start with intentionality?" Give them one thing right now that they can do to be more intentional in their day.
Put your phone away. And I know that this is the hardest, the easiest, simplest thing in the world. But when I first started teaching, I still had a flip phone. So I'm 37 years old. I'm still at a place in time where I remember the before times.
Yes.
But put your phone away. I remember a master teacher once told me that you should check your email 2 times a day. Check it like it was laundry. You don't do one sock at a time, you do the whole load. And It sounds so simplistic, Ross, but simply putting your phone away. We're so attention crave that we need that
Mm,
dopamine rush. I keep my phone in my truck most of the day. And people will
yeah.
say, well, how do you do that? Like, what if your kids or your wife had an emergency? And I'm like, well, they know the number to the school. And if it's a true emergency, they shouldn't be calling me first. They should be calling somebody else. But I will genuinely say that that is a biggest separator for me because as a PE teacher, I control my classroom with music a lot of the time. And when my phone is on me controlling my Spotify list, it is a distraction that makes me not present where I am. It's making me want to be somewhere else, reading news. And it's like, no, the work I'm doing right now is the most important part of my day. And if I can just be here, I will be better at what I do. Then I will pour more into my students and have more intentional conversations. How was your weekend? Where you don't have those if that's not around. So that's my number one piece of
Man,
advice. Put your phone away.
nailed it. Nailed it. I love that answer. I have never heard that one here on the show and nailed it because I think we're so engaged with everything else, everything that's in our phone. We're so engaged that we're not engaged in the present. And that is a problem and doesn't allow us to be intentional in our work. And so thank you for that one. My next question for you is what are some practical ways that you believe educators just can continue to find that love for education? Again, it's just some practical strategies that they can implement into their day to day.
So, first off, you need to do two heart checks. The first heart check is the 3-week rule. I heard from a mentor. You need to always self evaluate. Would my spouse marry me based on the last 3 weeks of my performance? Would I get the same job I have based on my last 3 weeks of performance? Am I deserving of my health goals with how I've been eating and exercising the last 3 weeks? So, start with a reflective mindset, just identify. Next up is every decision you make is a pre decision. You don't decide to be a calm teacher in the moment. You pre decide that today is going to be a good day. You pre decide that for me, rather than yelling at a student or blowing up, I'm going to breathe. And I've even started to, and for me, like praying for my kids that I know are going to
Yeah.
give me a hard time. And that
Good.
intentional mindset is huge, but it's pre deciding that you're going to be an amazing teacher that breathes rather than blows up, that is quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, but also sets a really high standard and does not relent on your standard because that's doing kids a disservice as well. So, those are my two big tips:
I
reflect
love that.
regularly on the 3-week rule, and then pre decide that you're going to be a happy teacher before you even step foot through the door that day.
Good. It's great. Pre-decision. I talk about that sometimes and to piggyback on that, like there's not a kid that is in your classroom or is your school that woke up this morning and pre-decided that he was going to make your life miserable. Kids don't they don't decide that, you know. They've got a lot of trauma and things that happen in their life that just force those behaviors to come out. But no one's out to get you. And so I think as educators, we tend to take things personally sometimes, and we can't because kids are kids and they're acting the way they are for a reason, behaviors, communication. And so know that. And I like that a lot. And so, Justin, one thing that, you know, like I said, we connect on social media and I've been following you. I know that culture is big for you. And I think this is cool too because you're in that PE teacher role. And so many teachers get into this mindset of, I'm just the classroom teacher in room 24. I'm the PE teacher. The culture is the principal's job. And that's not the case. So tell us more about culture and what it means to you and what it should mean to all teachers.
Everybody wants to enjoy where they work. Sometimes you are hired into a good culture and you get the benefit of that, but culture is what you make it. I mean, look at me right now. I'm in a closet. Like when I'm up on stage and I'm talking and I'm wearing a tie and a suit and whatever, but it's like this is my day to day. This is who I am. But from this position, I can be an energy spark to my school. John Gordon on the energy bus says no energy vampires. And in my class, we talk about that daily. Are you whining, complaining, or pointing the finger? And the same thing that happens in the classroom happens with colleagues, happens
Mhm.
with districts. I also tell teachers, like, think of your classroom like an old rickety ship from the 1600s. Once you've set sail from Europe to America, guess what? there's no blaming the boat makers. There's no blaming the sailors' parents for what they've caused. If you want to get across the Atlantic, you need to take extreme ownership and say, what happens on this ship is up to me in order to get us across. And I know that that's oversimplifying the problems with education, et cetera. But ultimately, when you take that approach, things are better. And here's a story I'll tell you. There was one time I wanted to get more culture at my school between coworkers. And I took it upon myself to tape down pickleball lines and just say, hey, we're going to play Friday mornings at my school. And I thought a few people would come out. We started with three and then four. And there were days where we'd have 10, 11, 12 people because, pickleball ball is the great equalizer. You can have 75-year-olds with 22-year-olds, and the 75-year-olds are winning. But I will tell you, like, how fun it was that I created something with the help of a guy named Ron Peters, that we created this idea, we built it, and it's like adults are yearning for connection and activity and
Mhm.
fun. And our school culture got better because I made the decision to go out there and just simply start something. I wasn't a passive participant, I was active. And if every teacher can do that, they don't just clock in and clock out and only worry about their box, which is their classroom. It's
Yes.
like, hey, let's worry about the whole school community. High fives at the printing machine. How are you doing? Remembering the names of your coworkers. Some of you are in such big schools, you don't get out of your departments. So, those are just some tips and advice I'd say to build culture that you want to be a part of, be an active participant.
Yes, great answer. Another great answer. It doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be life altering, shattering. Justin taped down pickleball court and said, "Let's play." And that was, I think too important to kind of point out that was your thing, right? You're the PE teacher, you're an athletic guy, you love pickleball. Like, hey, I'm this is kind of one of my passions, you could say, and I'm gonna see who wants to get in on it. And it turned into a really big culture builder, probably more than you ever could imagine. And so if you're teaching and you're like, I don't know where to start with one of your passions. Like book club. We used to have a book club at the school that I was principal at. Group of teachers that enjoyed reading said, we're going to start a book club. It was a couple of them, then it blossomed into something bigger and they had a lot of fun. Of course, they would do it outside of school hours with a glass of wine and all of that, but it really allowed them to connect and it improved our culture in our school. And so I think the big takeaway there is that it starts with you. Don't wait for your principal. Don't wait for a superintendent to start talking about culture, building culture. You can do it right there in your classroom with your colleagues.
Yeah, and
Justin,
title knows
yeah, go
no
ahead.
influence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Influence is leadership is who you have influence over. And the most powerful person I've ever met in the entire school on school culture was a para named Ron
Wow.
Peters, former sport coach at the middle school, nicest guy you'd ever meet,
Yeah.
never said a bad word about another human being. So don't ever think for a second that you can't be the dynamic school cultural leader from any position.
Boom. That's it. And that's love for education, the love for education. So I loved our topic. I love diving into that. Thank you. As we wrap it up, a couple questions I always like to end with, and you've given so many practical takeaways and advice to teachers. But what's one more thing, advice that you give to educators when you're out speaking to schools that you work with, regular basis? What's one thing that you just always say?
The extra mile educator isn't always someone with extra time. There's someone with extra intention. That's one. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone when you do have the extra time. And kids don't choose miserable role models.
That's
So we've
good.
all heard the quote, kids don't learn from people they don't like.
Yeah,
Well, their heroes aren't people who are miserable. The people I remember and the people who I want to be around, like you, Ross, are joyful, charismatic, positive, flowing people. So those are my big three that I would just say if I could give any tips of advice, those would be the big sticking points that I always give when I lead
yeah.
workshops or keynotes.
Perfect. Love that. You're right. That's me. You said, I've had some awesome people on here. It's because I truly enjoy being around and having conversations with people like you who are just positivity promoters and that want to help each other and lift others up and make this profession a better place to be. And so second question to go along with that, what is one piece of advice that you always give your students? If I polled 10 of your students, they're going to say, yeah, Mr. Pickens always says this.
AEC, three things you can control: attitude, effort, choices. And then finally, SCA, small, consistent actions over time make a big difference. So those would be the three things. Oh, and they're always going to hear me say, what's the most important rule in Coach Pickens' class? Don't talk when he's talking. So that also what they would pull as well if you
That's good.
heard that.
Yeah. That's a
The
life
more you
lesson then.
say, the less we play.
That's good. That's a life skill that hopefully they can take with them beyond elementary PE class too. So, all right. Again, such a powerful conversation. Thank you for joining and sharing so much. Man, this episode 30 minutes is packed with so much, so many takeaways. So thank you again for sharing your story and just your heart for the work. But for those that are listening, if you've connected with Justin, which I know you have already, and you want to connect with him further, Justin, tell our listeners how they can do that.
www.justinpickens.com. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm Justin Pickens Speaks. And then I'm Justin at justinpickens.com if you want to email me. That's Justin at justinpickens.com.
Pretty simple, just like that. So, Justin, thank you again. And so, just so you know, listeners, like Justin is taking time out of his school day. He's on his prep period, pouring into you. How cool is that? That is what the School Life series is all about. So, as always, to our listeners, thank you for being part of the School Life community. If there's a guest that you want to hear from, a topic that you want covered, let us know. But until next time, keep doing the work, keep choosing positivity, and go out and be great today.